There are great singers, and then there are voices that seems to come from somewhere else entirely. For generations, the falsetto has become one of the most powerful weapons in R&B, soul, funk, pop, and rock music. It can sound fragile and vulnerable in one moment and then explode into something electrifying the next. Some singers use falsetto as an occasional effect, while others made it their signature. And since I've gotten so much flack about my personal list, I'm dedicating this video to the singers that I left out. Now before we start, let's be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and push that notification bell to be sure you won't miss out on any more uploads. Now without further ado, let's cue that intro. When discussing the history of the Temptations, most people immediately think of David Ruffin, Eddie Kendricks, Paul Williams, Dennis Edwards, or Melvin Franklin. But one of the group's longest serving members deserved far more recognition. Ron Tyson joined the Temptations in 1983, and he eventually became one of the most important voices responsible for carrying the group's legendary sound into a new generation. That's significant because Tyson stepped into a vocal position forever associated with one of R&B's greatest falsetto singers, Eddie Kendricks. Trying to recreate Kendricks would have been a mistake. Instead, Tyson brought his own personality to the role. His falsetto is smooth, controlled, and remarkably consistent. Even as the years passed, Tyson maintained the ability to reach the upper notes without ever making them sound strained, but his importance goes beyond technique. Ron Tyson became a guardian of the Temptations' classic sound. On stage, whenever those familiar high harmonies was needed, Tyson provided the bridge between the group's Motown past and its modern incarnation. He spent decades performing some of the most demanding material in the Temptations catalog, and longevity like that deserves respect. At number 9 is a singer whose voice helped give Blue Magic its unmistakable identity, Ted Mills. If you ever heard Blue Magic's classic Sideshow, then you already understand why Mills belong on this list. What life has done to them. That record is particularly a masterclass in romantic falsetto. Mills possessed the type of voice that could sound delicate without sounding weak. There's a sadness in his delivery, a vulnerability, almost as though every note is coming from someone desperately trying to hold himself together. And that emotional quality became essential to Blue Magic's sound. During the 70s, Philadelphia soul was filled with incredible vocal groups. The competition included acts like the Stylistics, the Delphonics, the Spinners, and countless others. So standing out wasn't easy, but Ted Mills, he had something immediately recognizable. His falsetto could glide over lush orchestration without disappearing underneath it. Listen closely to his phrasing. Mills doesn't simply attack every high note. He allows the melody to breathe. He moves between registers naturally, using falsetto as an emotional tool rather than a gimmick. That's what separates good falsetto singers from great ones. Ted Mills didn't simply sing high, he made you feel those notes. Coming in at number 8 is one of the most underrated falsetto voices in R&B history, Tony Washington of the Dynamic Superiors. The group emerged during the 70s and became associated with Motown. Despite their talent, they never achieved the enormous mainstream recognition enjoyed by some of the label's biggest groups. Tony Washington, however, had a voice that was impossible to ignore. His falsetto could be dramatic, theatrical, soulful, and intensively expressive. Washington didn't always approach a song with restraint. Sometimes the entire point was a drama. He could stretch a phrase, climb into the upper register, and give a performance in almost like stage quality. That made the dynamic superiors sound different. And Washington himself was different. In an era that was filled with incredible vocalists, he wasn't afraid to make his personality part of his performance. For listeners discovering the dynamic superior decades later, one of the first questions is often the same. Who is that singing? That's a sign of a distinctive vocalist. Tony Washington may not have become a household name, but among serious soul and R&B fans, his falsetto deserves to be remembered. Number 7 takes us into the world of funk. Felton Pilate of Confunction. Now, here's where the list gets interesting because Felton demonstrates how effective falsetto could be outside of the traditional romantic vocal group format. Confunction could give you funk, and they could give you dance records. They could give you sophisticated musicianship. But when it was time to slow things down, Felton could completely change the atmosphere. His falsetto had warmth. It wasn't simply high, it was polished. Songs like Love Train demonstrated why vocals of Confunction remain so beloved. He could move into his upper register and create an intimacy that perfectly complemented the group's musicianship, and that's very important. Some falsetto singers overwhelmed the record, but Felton, he blended into the record. His voice became another instrument. It was smooth, floating, and controlled. That ability helped Confunction create ballads that was just as memorable as that funkier material. And Felton's talents extended far beyond singing. He was a musician, songwriter, and producer who worked would eventually connect him to other major chapters in R&B history. Although he did all of these things, when we talk about pure vocals, Felton, he deserves his flowers. At number 6, we're talking about a voice that deserves way more recognition. Wayne Cooper of Cameo. When most people hear the name Cameo, they immediately think of Larry Blackmon. And understandably so, because Blackmon was the face and the voice of the group. But longtime Cameo fans who knew that the group's vocal history went much deeper. Wayne Cooper possessed an extraordinary high register. His falsetto added another dimension to Cameo's sound, particularly during the group's earlier years. What makes Cooper fascinating is how naturally his voice could sit above the instruments. There was sweetness there, but then there was also soul. And in a funk group where the arrangements could be dense, romantic, rhythmic, and aggressive, Cooper's voice provided contrast. Unfortunately, Cooper's story was cut tragically short when he passed away in 1984. That means many listeners who discovered Cameo through their massive mid to late 80s success never became familiar with just how important Cooper had been to the group's earlier sound. I advise you to go back to listen to those records. Listen specifically for that soaring upper register, and once you recognize Wayne Cooper's voice, you'll start hearing Cameo entirely different. Now we enter in legendary territory. Number 5 is William Poogie Hart of the Delphonics. Philadelphia Soul would not have sounded the same without this man. His falsetto wasn't simply beautiful, it was haunting. There was something almost dreamlike about his voice. And when you combine that sound with Tom Bell's sophisticated production and arrangements, you get records that feel magical. Think about songs like La La Means I Love You. And Didn't I Blow Your Mind This Time? These records don't just sound the same without William Hart. His voice floated above the orchestration, strings underneath him, background harmony surrounding him, and Hart, he was right in the center. But if you listen beyond beauty, there's pain in that voice. That's what made him very special. Hart could sound romantic and heartbroken all at the same time, and his influence could be heard throughout generations of R&B singers, who discovered that falsetto didn't have to be aggressive to command attention. Sometimes the quietest voice in a room becomes the one that everybody remembers. And William Hart, he proved it. Number 4 might surprise some people because Howard Hewett isn't exclusively known as a falsetto singer, but that's exactly why his placement matters. Howard Hewett could do almost everything. When he joined Shalimar, he brought a voice that was capable of moving from a rich natural register into a soaring upper notes with incredible control. And unlike singers who depended primarily on falsetto, Hewett could use it strategically. He could build towards it, he could tense it, then suddenly open up his voice and take the song somewhere else entirely. Songs like A Night to Remember, This Is For the Lover in You,
Cause the meaning of love is always so.
and his later solo work showcase his versatility. All of these made Howard Hewett one of the generation's most respected vocalists. His tone was clean, his runs was precise, and even when they climbed higher, there was still strength behind the note. That's the difference between reaching a note and actually owning it. Howard Hewett's falsetto was only one weapon in an enormous vocal structure, but whenever he chose to use it, you knew exactly who was singing. At number 3, we have one of the most soulful voices ever associated with funk and R&B, Johnny Wilder of Heatwave. Heatwave gave us classic songs like Boogie Nights, The Groove Line, and one of the greatest ballads ever recorded, Always and Forever.
And explain just the things that you do.
And Johnny Wilder's voice was a major reason why those songs connected so deeply. Wilder's upper register possessed something that can't be taught. When he sang a romantic lyric, it didn't sound like anybody performing a love song. It sounded like somebody actually saying those words to another person. That intimacy is incredibly difficult to fake, and Wilder could maintain it, even when his voice climbed. His falsetto wasn't about showing off, it served the song. And then tragically, everything changed in 1979 when Wilder was involved in a devastating car accident that left him paralyzed from the neck down. For many performers, that could have been the end of the story completely, but Wilder continued to make music. He continued singing, he continued to create, and that perseverance adds to another layer of his already remarkable legacy. Johnny Wilder wasn't simply an incredible falsetto singer, he was in fact an incredible artist. There are certain singers where you only need about 2 seconds. The moment the voice comes through the speakers, you know exactly who it is. Russell Thompkins Jr., the legendary lead voice of the Stylistics, comes in at number 2. And when discussing pure falsetto tone, Thompkins has a legitimate argument to be number 1. His voice almost doesn't sound real. It's incredibly high, incredibly smooth, and remarkably delicate, yet it never loses emotional weight. Working with producer Tom Bell, the Stylistics created some of the most defining records of Philadelphia soul, with the songs Betcha by Golly Wow, You Are Everything, Break Up to Make Up,
That's all we do. Wish you love me.
and I'm Stone in Love with You.
Expensive cars I would buy.
Sitting above those lush arrangements was Russell Thompkins. His voice became the group's signature. Now think about how difficult that is. The Stylistics had beautiful harmonies and great songs, but Thompkins possessed such an unusual instrument that his voice alone could identify the group in later generations, singers are still trying to capture that sound. Many can hit the high notes, but very few can make them sound as effortless as Russell Thompkins did. There was no screaming, no sense that he's fighting. The notes, it just floats. For pure romantic falsetto, Russell Thompkins belongs in the conversation with anybody who ever touched a microphone. Now, before revealing who's number one, I have to acknowledge just how impossible a list like this really is. Because leaving out these singers that I'm about to mention feels almost disrespectful. Al Green, Emmanuel Johnson of Enchantment, DEBARGE, Aaron Neville, Eric Bonet, Maxwell, I'll Be Sure, Anthony TCD Lundy of Force MDs, Philippe Wynne, Johnny Carter of the Dells, Lenny Williams, David Oliver, Phil Perry, and Eugene Record of the Shy Lights. Every one of these singers can make an argument for a placement in the top 10 list, but still, there's one artist left. At number one is Prince, and Prince presents an interesting case because calling Prince one of the greatest falsetto singers almost feels too limited. He was a guitarist, a pianist, a drummer, bassist, songwriter, producer, arranger, performer, and one of the most versatile vocalists in popular music has ever produced. But his falsetto, that was something special. Prince didn't just have one falsetto sound. He could make it sensual. He could make it vulnerable. He could make it playful. He could make it desperate. And, when necessary, he could turn it into a scream. Listen to the way Prince approached vocals throughout his career. On one song, his falsetto could sound almost like a whisper. On another song, he stacked multiple vocal parts until it sounded like an entire group of princesses singing behind him. And then, suddenly, he could jump from a low register to an upper explosive note without warning. Prince understood contrast. That's what made his falsetto so effective. It wasn't simply that he could sing high. It was when he chose to sing high. A Prince song could start restrained and intimate, gradually building tension until that falsetto became the emotional release. Songs such as Do Me Baby, Adore, Kiss, Insatiable, and countless others. These songs demonstrated different styles of his upper register. And then there was the beautiful ones. That performance alone shows what made Prince different. Technique gets you the notes. Emotion makes people remember them. But Prince, he had both. He could study the traditions of soul singers who came before him, then reshape those influences into something completely his own. That's why his falsetto never sounded like an imitation. It sounded like Prince. And when a singer's voice becomes that recognizable, that influential, and that irresistible from their identity, you enter something that's very rare. So, for versatility, control, emotion, originality, and the ability to use falsetto across funk, rock, soul, R&B, and pop, and that's the reason why Prince is number one. And then you have it. 10 of the greatest falsetto singers of all time. But here's the question. Who did I miss this time? And which singer from the honorable mentions should have cracked the top 10? Now this time I want you to drop your personal top 5 favorite falsetto singers of all time in the comments below. And remember, this isn't about who can hit the highest notes. It's about the voices that made those notes mean something.